A chilling silence, a man haunted by his own shadow. Episode 10 doesn't just close Dexter's story, it opens the darkest question of all. What happens when the monster you've lived with your entire life finally meets its end? For years, Dexter has been defined not just by his choices, but by something he could never escape: the dark passenger. It wasn't just a voice in his head or a violent urge. It was his constant companion, the shadow whispering behind every decision. As the final episode unfolds, the story doesn't just give us a conclusion to Dexter's actions. It challenges us to face the very core of who he is. Was Dexter ever truly in control, or was he just a passenger himself, driven by a force too powerful to resist? Episode 9 left us standing at the edge of a storm. Dexter had been cornered emotionally, his double life threatened, and the weight of every choice pressing harder than ever before. Fans were left questioning, would he finally break free of his endless cycle, or would the dark passenger drag him deeper into the abyss? Episode 10 wastes no time answering, but it does so in a way that's more unsettling, more thought-provoking than anyone could have expected. The hook of this episode, and really of Dexter's entire journey, is the uneasy balance between his need to kill and his desire to be human. He's a father, a lover, a brother, but also a predator. In this finale, we watch those identities collide in a way that makes every decision feel like it could be his last. Every step Dexter takes feels heavier, like the ground itself is about to crack beneath him. The showrunners wanted us to feel the pressure, and they succeed, because every scene carries the weight of finality. But here's what makes this ending so powerful. It doesn't just answer what happens to Dexter. It forces us to ask, can anyone ever kill the dark passenger? Or is it a curse that simply moves from one host to the next, forever feeding on trauma, guilt, and desire? As we step into episode 10, the stage is set not just for a resolution, but for a reckoning. Dexter is no longer just a character in a show. He becomes a mirror for something deeper inside us all, that quiet part of our minds that sometimes whispers things we'd rather not admit. The finale knows this, and it uses every moment to build that tension. It's not about gore or shock value. It's about stripping Dexter bare, revealing the truth beneath the mask he's worn for so long. This is the brilliance of the episode's opening act. It doesn't rush into action, but it also doesn't waste time. Instead, it pulls us into Dexter's headspace, making us feel the conflict as if it were our own. And as the story unfolds, we realize this isn't just the end of a season. This is the final judgment of Dexter Morgan, and of the dark passenger itself. Asterisk, the final episode of Dexter Resurrection does not open with fireworks. It begins with silence. The kind of silence that weighs on your chest like a stone. Dexter is alone, his world reduced to fragments. Every lie he has built, every mask he has worn has started to crumble. Episode 10 places us right there with him, inside a crumbling empire of secrecy, where even the walls seem to whisper back his sins. The first act of the episode is a slow unraveling. We see Dexter trying to keep control, but the truth is slipping faster than his grip. Conversations with those closest to him feel more like interrogations than family moments. Every word has double meaning, every glance feels like a verdict. What makes these moments so unsettling is not what's said out loud, but what hangs in the silence afterward, that silent accusation. We know who you really are. From here, the episode shifts into its tense midsection. Dexter's double life collides violently with the outside world. The police net grows tighter, every lead inching closer to his carefully hidden trail. His dark passenger pushes him toward desperate choices, whispering that survival is the only path forward. Yet there's something different in Dexter this time. He's not as certain. The cold confidence that defined him is replaced by hesitation. For the first time in years, he seems tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being a slave to the hunger inside him. The real turning point comes in his interactions with Harrison. Episode 10 puts father and son face to face with the rawest truth imaginable, the inheritance of darkness. Harrison isn't just a bystander anymore. He is the mirror reflecting Dexter's own sins. In their conversations, We see the unspoken question building: is the dark passenger something you can fight, or is it written in blood, destined to pass from one generation to the next? These moments are where the finale earns its power. It's not about bodies on a table. It's about the legacy of violence, the inheritance of trauma, and the way shadows stretch across generations. As the tension builds, Dexter makes choices that feel both inevitable and heartbreaking. He lashes out, not with the precision of a predator, but with the desperation of a cornered man. We see him attempt to justify, to rationalize, to tell himself and Harrison that everything he has done was to protect, to guide, to channel the monster within. But the words ring hollow. For the first time, Dexter's justification collapses under its own weight. The climax is a masterclass in restraint. There's no explosion, no grand spectacle. Instead, it is intimate, quiet, and deeply personal. Dexter faces the one truth he cannot escape. He has become everything he once promised himself he'd never be. The code, the rules, the rituals, all of it lies shattered at his feet. And as Harrison watches, we understand that this moment is not about Dexter's survival. It's about what he leaves behind. The final act of the episode doesn't shy away from pain, it leans into it. We see Dexter's choices catch up with him, not in the form of a faceless detective or a courtroom, but in the form of Harrison's judgment. The son becomes the jury, the executioner, and perhaps the only hope for ending the cycle of blood. It's poetic, brutal, and strangely fitting. By the end of episode 10, what remains is not a triumphant Dexter, but a hollow one. A man stripped of excuses, laid bare before the truth he has run from his entire life. The dark passenger is not a villain to be slain, but a shadow that refuses to leave. And as the screen fades, the audience is left with the echo of a question that lingers long after the credits. Did Dexter's story truly end here, or has his darkness simply found a new home? The ending of Dexter Resurrection episode 10 is not designed to shock with spectacle. It's designed to unsettle with truth. What we witness in the final moments is not simply the end of a character arc, but the collapse of an entire philosophy that Dexter has carried for decades. The central question becomes, what happens to the dark passenger when its host is no longer willing or able to carry it? At first glance, the finale seems deceptively simple. Dexter's carefully constructed world implodes. The people closest to him stop seeing him as a protector and begin to recognize him for what he is, a predator who has been living under a mask of control. But underneath that collapse lies a deeper theme, the confrontation between myth and reality. For years, Dexter has mythologized his darkness, treating the dark passenger like a separate entity, something he could channel, negotiate with, even obey. By the time episode 10 reaches its climax, that illusion is shattered. The dark passenger was never a ghost, never a demon. It was Dexter himself. Every action, every death, every justification, it was all his choice, cloaked in the comfort of imagining that something else was pulling the strings. This realization hits hardest in the intimate showdown between Dexter and Harrison. Their final confrontation is not about whether Dexter is caught by the law or whether he escapes one more time. It's about whether the truth can finally be spoken aloud. Harrison becomes the voice the audience has been waiting for, the voice that refuses to buy into the myth. He sees through the excuse of the code. He understands that the victims weren't chosen by a set of rules. They were chosen by Dexter's hunger. And in that moment, the dark passenger is stripped of its disguise. It is no longer a separate passenger. It is the driver. The ending also plays with a haunting question. Is the dark passenger something that can be destroyed, or is it destined to live on in others? Harrison's role makes this tension unbearable. On one hand, he represents hope, the possibility of breaking the cycle. On the other, his very existence suggests that darkness might be hereditary, lurking in his blood, waiting to resurface. The writers deliberately blur this line, leaving us with an unease that lingers. Has the curse been broken, or has it simply shifted hosts? Symbolism runs thick through the finale. The setting of Dexter's last moments, stripped of ritual. stripped of order, reflects the disintegration of his identity. No plastic wrap, no tools, no precision, just raw, exposed consequence. It's as if the dark passenger, once dressed in layers of control, has been unmasked to reveal its true form, chaos and guilt. Even Dexter's body language tells the story. For once, he does not move with the calm of a hunter. He moves like a man cornered by himself. Thematically, the ending circles back to the very beginning of Dexter's story. From the pilot episode, the question has always been, is Dexter a monster pretending to be human, or a human cursed by monstrous urges? Episode 10 answers, he was always human. A deeply broken, traumatized human who found it easier to invent a dark passenger than to face the truth of his own choices. That's why the finale resonates, because it reframes the entire series. The dark passenger wasn't a supernatural force, it was denial. It was avoidance. It was the story Dexter told himself so he could sleep at night, and yet the finale doesn't close neatly. Instead, it leaves us with lingering unease. Harrison's decision, the way he confronts and judges his father, may end Dexter's life, but it doesn't end the questions. What will become of Harrison? Did he absorb part of that darkness in the process? Can anyone touched by violence ever truly escape its shadow? These open-ended questions are not just clever storytelling. They're deliberate. They force the audience to wrestle with the same dilemmas that haunted Dexter for years. So what, then, is the fate of the dark passenger? In the most literal sense, it dies with Dexter. But in the symbolic sense, it remains very much alive. Not as a ghostly entity, but as an idea. The dark passenger represents the side of human nature we all fear, the whispers of anger, the thirst for control, the temptation of violence. By ending the story the way they did, the writers make it clear you cannot kill the dark passenger. You can only confront it, resist it, or surrender to it. Dexter surrendered. Harrison resisted. And we, as viewers, are left to wonder how we would face our own shadows. That is why this ending is powerful. It's not about closure, it's about confrontation. And for Dexter Morgan, that confrontation was always inevitable. The final moments of Dexter Resurrection Episode 10 are not just an ending, they are an invitation. An invitation for us to step back and see the bigger picture. What was this story really about? And where does it leave us now? For many, Dexter's death feels like closure. But if you look closely, the finale doesn't simply close the book. It leaves its pages fluttering, as though another chapter might still be written in whispers rather than words. Dexter's story has always been a tightrope walk between horror and humanity. The dark passenger was never just about bloodlust. It was about the struggle to belong, the endless attempt to wear the mask of normalcy. By tearing away that mask in the finale, the show confronts us with the raw truth. Dexter was never the anti-hero we wanted him to be. He was a man broken by trauma, consumed by denial, and destroyed by his refusal to accept responsibility. And yet, that very truth is what makes his journey so hauntingly human. Because who among us hasn't built a story, a justification, to escape the weight of guilt? Dexter's myth ended in blood, but the lesson lingers far beyond the screen. So, what does this mean for the future? The most obvious question fans are asking, does this ending pave the way for a spin-off? In one sense, Harrison is the perfect vessel for that possibility. His confrontation with Dexter was not just the climax of the story. It was the passing of a torch, or perhaps the passing of a curse. If Dexter's dark passenger was a shadow, born of trauma, then Harrison now stands at the crossroads. Will he inherit that darkness? Or will he break free, becoming the antithesis of his father? The ambiguity of his final scenes is intentional. Harrison drives away, leaving behind both his father's body and the weight of his legacy. But as the camera lingers, we cannot help but wonder, is he running from the dark passenger, or carrying it with him in silence? The writers left this question deliberately unresolved because it mirrors reality. Violence, trauma, and cycles of abuse rarely end neatly. They echo, they ripple outward, sometimes skipping a generation, sometimes returning with greater force. Harrison embodies that echo. He is both hope and threat, promise and warning. If a spin-off ever emerges, it will almost certainly revolve around his struggle, not with external villains, but with the shadow his father left behind, and that, in many ways, would be the truest continuation of Dexter's legacy. Yet even without a sequel, the ending stands strong as symbolic closure. By allowing Dexter's story to end not in triumph, but in judgment, the show accomplishes what many long-running sagas fail to do. It forces accountability. It does not glorify him. It does not justify him. It ends with the simple, devastating truth that no one escapes consequence forever, not even a man who has spent his life mastering deception. In that sense, the finale gives us something rare, moral clarity in a world of shadows. Still, the most haunting implication lies not in Harrison's future but in ours. The dark passenger, stripped of its metaphor, is the part of human nature we all carry. It is the quiet voice of resentment, the thirst for revenge, the darkness we prefer not to acknowledge. Dexter gave it a name and a face, but the reason his story resonates is because that darkness is real in us, in society, in history. The finale reminds us that while Dexter is gone, the dark passenger is not. It lingers not in a single character but in the audience. It is the question we take with us after the screen fades. What do we do with our shadows? This is where the brilliance of episode 10 truly shines. It does not rely on spectacle to stick with us, it relies on unease. The kind of unease that makes you replay the final moments over and over, searching for a hidden meaning. The kind of unease that makes you wonder if Harrison will one day feel that same pull, if one day he'll look in the mirror and see the shadow of his father staring back. The kind of unease that asks whether Dexter's story was ever really fiction at all, or whether it was always about us. So was it a satisfying ending? That depends on what you wanted from Dexter. If you wanted him to escape, to outwit death, one more time, then the finale is a bitter pill. But if you wanted truth, raw, uncomfortable, unflinching truth, then episode 10 delivers it with precision. It gives Dexter the only ending he could ever truly have, one that forces him to confront himself. In the end, Dexter Morgan dies, but the dark passenger does not. It is not a ghost to be exorcised, nor a demon to be slain. It is an idea, and ideas don't die. They evolve, they wait, they whisper. And perhaps somewhere on a lonely road where Harrison drives into the unknown, it has already begun to whisper again.